Here we are again, a player wants out of Columbus. Is it different this time? I think it might be, and we're going to talk about why on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. And if you're not an everydayer yet, you can find us on every podcast app of choice. You can find us on YouTube and on Sirius XM. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So today, we're going to talk about prospects. We're going to talk about fun. We're going to talk about the draft. And instead of that, we're talking about Patrik Laine. Because immediately after I spent a bunch of time talking about what the top six could look like in yesterday's episode, I hit upload. I sat down to record some profiles for the upcoming draft, and Patrik Laine wants a fresh start. I have no real problem with this. I've always been someone who says if they don't want to be here, then I don't want them to be here, and like sometimes a player doesn't want to be here, and like that's fine. He's allowed not to be. It's frustrating in this case, especially because Patrik Laine has always been a player that he arrived here and immediately was like, oh wow, I love it here in Columbus. I love the team, I love the city, I never want to go anywhere else. Probably signed a cheaper contract here than he could have got somewhere else. Obviously, it was only a 4-year extension. He's got 2 years of that still to go. But his time in Columbus has just kind of been not what I think anyone thought it would be, and like that's not on him. That's not on the team, or not like solely on him, solely on the team. He's had some ups and downs in his seasons here. Sometimes he's looked like a game-breaking star. Sometimes he's looked like he shouldn't even be on the roster, He went into the player assistance program in, I want to say, December or January time, maybe, and then didn't play again. Apparently he's doing well in the program. They expect him to be ready to go in October, but per TSN Insider Trading, Patrik Laine wants a fresh start on a different team, so both he and the Blue Jackets will try to work a trade out. That's, again, frustrating and disappointing, but I'm not like mad at Laine for this. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about like why he wants a fresh start. We're going to talk about his time with the Blue Jackets. We're going to talk about what kind of return the Blue Jackets could get in this trade. Because once again, it feels like the Blue Jackets are kind of staring down the barrel of every other team in the league knows this player wants out. So they don't have to they can basically lowball the Blue Jackets until the cows come home because they know that they hold all the cards, So we'll talk about that in a minute, though. First off, I want to talk about Patrik Laine and his time in Columbus, because I was really excited by him coming in with Columbus. He played 4 seasons, hasn't played a full season in any of them. So he came in during the weird pseudo bubble season where it didn't get started until January, and the Blue Jackets only played like 8 teams all season. He played 45 games for the Blue Jackets, had 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points. Next season was much better. He was a point-a-game player, 56 points in 56 games, including 26 goals. Last season, or season before last, 55 games, 22 goals, 52 points. And this most recent season, he only played 18 games, 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points. Hasn't played a full slate of games since the 2018-2019 season, where he played all his 2 games for Winnipeg Jets, had 50 points, 30 goals. He never really hit the potential that I think a lot of people saw in him. And that's not necessarily a problem with Laine himself. I think he struggled with injury. I think he struggled with bad luck. I think he struggled playing on a truly terrible team for a lot of his tenure here. Subpar coaching, subpar line mates. I think him and Johnny Gaudreau never clicked, which is frustrating because on paper they should have really worked well together. You know, you've got the elite setup guy in Johnny Gaudreau and the potential elite goal scorer in Patrik Laine, and I still think that Patrik Laine has one of the best shots in the league. He just didn't ever really seem to get it going in Columbus, which is, I'm sure, more frustrating for him than anyone else, but it meant that his time in Columbus has kind of constantly been, he's overrated, he's overpaid, doesn't belong on this team, get rid of him. And for a team like Columbus, where everyone says, oh, no one cares about Columbus, it's why players want to go there if they don't want to deal with the media and everything. The media around Patrik Laine felt extremely loud. And I think that was exacerbated by that podcast. I want to say the CBJ Roundtable, where they talked about, they made a really unnecessary and uncouth suicide joke in relation to Patrik Laine. And I'm not surprised that he wants to leave Columbus. I don't think it's that he wants to leave Columbus specifically. I think he just wants to go somewhere else. I think his relationship with the fans has gotten a little strained. I think his relationship with the team has gotten a little strained. I don't know that a fresh start will help him. But if that's what he wants, then, it sucks. But that's potentially not the worst for the Blue Jackets. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit here. But I'm disappointed that Laine won't be on the team in October. I have been a big supporter of Laine basically since he came to the Blue Jackets. Had kind of a disappointing first season for them, never really got going, missed the start due to injury and all of that. But then, we saw in the next 2 seasons, he was a point-a-game player or near enough. And then this season, everything went wrong and couldn't get it going, couldn't gel with anyone, got healthy scratched, missed a ton of time with injury. And the other thing as well about Patrik Laine is that he has had a really, really rough go of things kind of in his personal life for the last little while as well. Obviously, his father died unexpectedly a couple of years ago. The trade had to, I think, have affected him, especially, moving to a new country and unexpectedly and having to get to know a whole new set of teammates, a whole new set of systems. I'm unsurprised that Patrik Laine did not turn into a superstar here. In hindsight, it makes sense that, a lot of this was a lot of his problems in Columbus, I think, have just kind of been a result of, man, this is bad luck, So I'm not surprised that he wants out, that he wants to go somewhere else. I just don't know where that somewhere else will be. And I don't know if that somewhere else will give him the opportunity to really kind of become that star that I think he thinks he could be and that I think he could be. And I think a lot of people think he could be. But he's going to have to go somewhere that really works out for him. Otherwise, I don't know that he's going to get a second stab at this. We'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Before I do that, though, I've got to tell you about Game Time. The NBA Finals are underway, the Stanley Cup Finals are underway, and it'd be so cool to get to go to one of those games. Obviously, I am not in the area for any of those things, but Game Time makes getting tickets for these things even faster and easier, provided you are in the right place for it. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off or puck drop. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and a lowest price guarantee. So Game Time is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. And it's not just sports. They've got comedy, they've got theater, they've got music, they've got all kinds of things. If you need a ticket to get in, you can get it at Game Time. And I mentioned that lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in your section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about Patrik Laine today and the trade that is probably going to happen. I'm on a plane all day tomorrow. Honestly, I'm expecting something to happen tomorrow because, as we all know, everything happens when I am either asleep, in the shower, or on a plane. So I am taking one for the team. I am going to be on a plane all day tomorrow, so I expect something to happen, whether that's hiring, firing, signing, trading, whatever. So look forward to that. That being said, Patrik Laine wants out of Columbus, and not necessarily wants out of Columbus, just wants. I don't think it's that he wants to leave Columbus. I think it's that he wants to go somewhere else, which is a distinction that I think not a lot of people outside of Columbus are going to make. You know, this is going to be another case of, oh, look, another player that doesn't want to stay in Columbus. And the frustrating thing is that, like, yeah, there's a long list of players that haven't wanted to stay in Columbus. You know, we look at Bobrovsky, Panarin, Duchesne, Dubois, Seth Jones asked out. The problem is that all of these players wanted out for different reasons. You know, it's not like you can point to any one thing and say that's the reason that star players don't want to leave. You know, like the rumor was that everyone hated Tortorella and no one wanted to stay because of Tortorella. And like, that's simply like maybe he and Dubois clashed and that was part of the reason. But like, Panarin wanted to play on the big stage. He wanted to play in New York. Bobrovsky, they wouldn't pay him, so he left and got the payday that he felt he'd earned. And like, frankly, I think he's earning that payday right now. He's in the Stanley Cup Finals, and the Blue Jackets are golfing again. You know, Duchesne wanted to play in Duchesne didn't even necessarily want to play in Nashville. He just wanted to be a country music guy, and he wasn't going to get that in Columbus. You know, and Seth Jones, I suspect actually that Seth Jones asked for a trade because he didn't get the captaincy, which maybe that's me reading too much into things. But I heard like when all of the stuff about Elias Pettersson maybe wanting to leave Vancouver came out, there was a lot of rumblings about how it was because he was annoyed that he didn't get the captaincy and Quinn Hughes got it instead. Not necessarily because he thought he would be a better captain than Quinn Hughes, but I think they maybe told him that he was going to get the C and then they gave it to Hughes instead. And I don't know that like a similar thing happened in Columbus, but I know that there was a lot of people talking about how Seth Jones was going to be the next captain after Nick Foligno. Nick Foligno leaves. They give the captaincy to not Seth Jones. Very shortly after that, he said he didn't want to sign long-term in Columbus. So I do wonder, like, this is all conjecture, you know, like for legal reasons. This is not, I have no proof of any of this, but that's kind of my thinking about that, you know. So it's not like there's one thing in Columbus that's making these players want to leave, but it's frustrating that it's happening yet again. And it's frustrating that it's happening with a guy like Laine who, you know, as recently as the season before last, scored a goal against Winnipeg, and then after the game found out, okay, the only team he hasn't scored against in his career is Columbus, and he was like, well, I hope that I never score against Columbus. I want to play here for the rest of my life. So deeply, deeply frustrating that it's gotten to this point, and I don't know that there was I wonder if there was something that the organization could have done to help this along. I wonder if there was something that the team could have done, something that Laine could have done, the fan base could have done. Like, I don't know if this situation was salvageable or even, you know, potentially is salvageable. There were reports today that all of this kind of came out before Waddell was hired, and so Waddell hasn't spoken to Laine or his agent yet. He's going to speak to him, I think, this week or next week. Figure out what's going on there. So I don't know. Is this relationship salvageable? I don't think so, but potentially. We'll see. But the good side of this is, depending on what the return for Laine is, the Blue Jackets will suddenly have a little bit more cap space to work with. So they currently have 23.7 cap space, $1 million in cap space right now. If they manage to get rid of Laine without retaining anything, that's an extra $8.7 million in cap space. They have a bunch of RFAs. That would give them, if I could do math on the fly, I believe it would give them like 31 or $32 million in cap space, which is it's not a bad amount of cap space, and we talk, you've got to find the money for Marchenko, for Nylander, Sillinger, Chinikov, Johnson, Texier, Jake Bean, Jet Greaves needs a new contract, I believe. Yep, there's all of these, Jake Christensen, Nick Blankenberg, Josh Dunn, a lot of AHL guys as well need new contracts, and I don't know what the plan is, and we'll maybe talk through some of my thoughts on that in a second here, but like, if the Blue Jackets can get out of this without retaining any salary on Laine, that opens up a lot of options in terms of cap space, in terms of going out and picking up somebody else, in terms of signing the guys that they have, and also it frees up a roster spot in the top 6 as well for, say, Gavin Brindley, for example, because, I've been looking at the top 6 and what it could look like next season. Moving Laine out gives someone else an opportunity to step in, because if Laine is on this team, he's a top 6 forward, he's being paid like a top 6 forward, he should be playing like a top 6 forward in theory. With him gone, that frees up space for, like I said, someone like a Gavin Brindley to step up. Someone like, it provides space, maybe for a guy like Alex Nylander if he can continue his hot streak at the end of the season with, So like lots of moving parts. Sucks that Laine's gone, and the problem with trading Patrik Laine is that then you don't have Patrik Laine. You're not going to get a player of that caliber back. So the question becomes, what do you get back from Patrik Laine? And so we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, though, I've got to tell you about Ultimate Hockey GM. This is one of our newest partners, and I'm really excited about this. If you ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM, managing your hockey franchise, do you think you could run the Blue Jackets better than the current GM? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players and draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Blue Jackets fan, you know there is no off-season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and I think that's why you're going to love the game. Obviously, the Blue Jackets offseason is happening right now, and we're talking about trades and signings and all this kind of stuff. You can do that all on Ultimate Hockey GM, completely free, playable offline, play on the go as you want and when you want to. And, by the way, Locked On Network listeners are going to get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store, so make sure to check it out. All you have to do is go to hockeygm.app.app, or look it up on the app stores. Once again, that is Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're going to talk about what kind of return the Blue Jackets could get for Patrik Laine, because I've had a handful of different kind of trade proposals. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about, okay, well, let's do Laine for Nature's rights, and let's sign Nature's to a long term. I don't necessarily love that as an option. I don't know. Maybe I think Nature's is not going to be the player he was in Carolina here. I don't think the systems are set up for it, and I think that he's probably going to command too much money too much of the cap, and I would rather have our young centers get significant ice time. I talked about this in yesterday's episode where I talked about Adam Fantilli and how I want him to get, 20 to 22 minutes as that 1C, and then, Cole Sillinger is the 2C, Voronkov is the 3C, etc. Like, bringing Natchez in, it's probably going to be on a long-term contract, 7 or 8 years. And again, it's a similar thing to the Severson contract. Don't hate it in principle, but it is blocking young players from getting that development that is honestly good for them. And I don't think that Natchez is as good as everyone thinks he's going to be in Columbus, quite frankly. So that's one option. Another option I saw from Everydayer. Let me just pull up my notifications. Fenrir Varga on Twitter. A young defenseman who can actually defend. So Schneider in New York, Caden Gooley in Montreal, Mario Ferraro in San Jose, and Alex Vlasic in Chicago. I'm not crazy about any of those options. Gooley is not going to get traded from Montreal. Vlasic is not going to get traded from Chicago. I don't know enough about Schneider to have an opinion on him. Mario Ferraro is not a young defenseman who can actually defend. So that's the one that is the most no. I could see him going to the Sharks because they have cap space to spare, and having good players to surround their young players with is probably a great move. I could see Chicago being an option, but it would depend on who's coming back the other way. But there are a lot of people that are saying things like, oh, we'll do, hang on, let me find, Locked On Canadians host Scott Matler came up and said Jordan Harris, Jesse Ylonen, and a second-round pick. I don't feel great about, it's fine as a trade thing, but I feel like at this point I would rather have one solid asset than 3 or 4 little assets. I don't know what that asset is. Like I said, okay, let's have the Carolina Hurricanes want Laine. Let's take their first round pick. Let's take the 29th overall or 26th overall that the Montreal Canadiens have. Let's take that for Laine. I'd rather have that, or maybe a young impact forward. I really like, again, if we go back to Carolina, I really like Jack Drury. So someone like that. I wonder if you can package Laine and someone like Merzlikins or Provorov in a trade, maybe add a prospect as a sweetener and get someone and get someone else like that. I don't know what the option is here, but I would rather have one big solid asset than so when I would rather see a hockey trade, quote unquote, than one of these oh, well, you can have a second and a fourth and this prospect that's going to play in Europe for the rest of his career and also a fifth string goalie for Patrik Laine. The value probably adds up, but I would rather have one piece coming back, like the original Laine trade. It was essentially Laine for Dubois, and then they threw in Jack Roslovic, and we threw in a third round pick or something like that, or the Seth Jones trade. So Johansson for Seth Jones straight up, something like that I would like to see as a return for Laine. I don't think you're going to get a player of Seth Jones's caliber in return, but I would rather take a young impact forward with a couple of years of team control, or potentially someone who has a couple of years left on their deal and is maybe a little bit on the older side. My problem here is that if you add someone like a Natchez, it's going to they're going to get locked up for 8 years. So if you pick up someone like God, I'm blanking on literally every player in the league. Let's go to the Hurricanes and look at their cap page. So someone like Evgeny Kuznetsov has a year left on his deal at 3.9. I might take a second round pick and Kuznetsov for Laine straight up. If you retain salary, On Line A, you're going to get more value, but then you have to retain salary on Line A. The good news is the Blue Jackets, I believe the only dead cap the Blue Jackets have next year is the remains of the Alex Wenberg buyout. And hey, that's a player that I would take back on this team. He is making, just under 900K for this team. He is a UFA right now. He is with the Rangers currently. Just finished up his most recent deal, which was 3 years with the Kraken, making 4.5 million. Like I might trade Laine to New York, get the rights to Wenberg and another piece. I don't know what that other piece would be, but someone like Wenberg, who you can give, maybe 4 years to. He's a really solid defensive playmaking centerman that I think, honestly, I know that the Blue Jacket fans were tired of him not shooting the puck, but I think that this team could really use someone like him. I think the team could really use, someone like Oliver Bjorkstrand, and that's a trade that stings now. In hindsight, they traded Bjorkstrand to fit Laine under the cap, and now Laine's gone. I've been thinking a lot as well about Nikolai Ehlers in Winnipeg, who wants out of Winnipeg as well, is not really interested in extending his contract there. That's not a fresh start for Laine going back to Winnipeg, but something like Laine for Ehlers, again as a 1-for-1, could be enticing for the Blue Jackets. As this continues to move, we'll probably hear whispers, rumblings of teams that are interested in Laine and what the asking price is. We probably won't know more until next week or until Don Waddell speaks to Laine and they get an idea of where they're at, till he speaks to teams around the league, gets an idea of where they're at in terms of the asking price, things like that. But it seems like Patrik Laine is not going to be on the roster in October, which is kind of a bummer because I'm a big Patrik Laine fan. He was great with the fans. He was entertaining on the ice, entertaining off the ice. Seemed like a really genuinely nice guy. And I'm kind of bummed that it didn't work out in Columbus, because I think if everything had gone right, he could have been a future superstar for us, or a current superstar, really. So that's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I will give you the prospect profile that I promised you today, which is going to be Jesse Pulkkinen. I sat down with Sam McGilligan to talk about the overage Finnish player and why he could be an interesting pick for the Blue Jackets with that 36th overall that they may or may not have, depending on if they give it to Philadelphia or not. But thank you for listening to today's show, for making it your first listen of the day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and on SiriusXM. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTEI. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and Instagram. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.